Good evening, or good morning, I suppose. I've never settled which one fits this late. There's a road south of here I'm going to tell you not to take. I'll get to why. It takes some people all at once. There was one it took a piece at a time. A young man, healthy, who drove it to get to work. The kind of healthy you don't notice on somebody until it's gone. I'll tell you what was in that car the last time it came through the crossroads. But not yet, because the end isn't the part that'll keep you up tonight. The watching it happen is. This is Field Notes, WGRY 91.3 out of Greyford. I'm Edward Hollis. I drove south this week to a crossroads I've been going to for 30-odd years to ask a man about a letter. The letter's for another night. What he told me when I got there is tonight. There's nobody alive who's watched that road longer than he has. So, let me take you down to the crossroads first, and the man, and then I'll tell you about the ones who took it. I should tell you about Harold before I tell you about the road. You can't separate the two. He's been at that crossroads longer than the road's been paved. Harold's a man I drive down to see, has been longer than this show's been on the air. There's a station at Pendle Cross, south of here, where two roads meet that were meeting before anybody thought to name them, and Harold's worked the pumps there the better part of 50 years. Married into the family that runs it, back when he was young. His wife's been gone a while now. He stayed. I don't drive down to follow up on anything. People write me and I read some of them to you, and that's one kind of work. Harold isn't that. Harold's older than the show. I go down, he talks while the pump runs, or we sit at his kitchen table, and I write it all down that night before it goes soft on me. He is the warmest man I know. He is also, and he'd tell you this himself, a talker. You ask Harold the time and he'll tell you about the watch his father wore. I mean that as a kindness. The world's short on men who still talk to a stranger, like the stranger matters. Now, the road. There's a stretch of Route 9 that runs south out of that crossroads, and the people who live down there do not take it. They will go 20 miles out of their way not to take it. If you're from there, you know the way around the way you know your own hand, and you don't think about it, and you don't explain it to anybody. You just don't take 9. Harold knows that. He's known it 50 years. But there's one thing about Harold the whole night turns on, so hold on to it. Harold married into the people who know that road. He didn't come up in it. He has stood at that crossroads half a century watching the local cars turn the long way without a word passing between them. And not once has he been the one who got to say, "Don't." The knowing was never handed to him. He's beside it. He's always been beside it. So when a stranger pulls in, map on the dash, asking after the quick way south, Harold sells them their gas, and he watches which way they turn. He's watched a lot of them turn onto 9. Let me tell you about a few of them. The first one Harold told me about is old, 1971, he thinks. And I trust him on the year because Harold doesn't date things by the calendar. He dates them by what was parked at his pumps. This one was a company car, a salesman. The kind that came through 3 to a week back then, samples in the trunk, somewhere to be by morning. The man was in a hurry, had a call to make down south, had his map out on the dash, and the map showed Route 9 running straight down to where he was going. Harold told him the long way, told him the way the locals go. And the man did what a man in a hurry does with a stranger who's just told him to drive an extra 40 minutes. He smiled, he thanked him, and he took 9. They take the map. They always take the map. Now here's what Harold remembers, and Harold remembers everything. That same afternoon, the company car comes back through the crossroads, northbound, pulls in, and the salesman rolls down his window and asks Harold the way south, to the town he had already driven to. Same man a few hours later, and he does not know Harold. No nod, no "you again." The 10 minutes they'd stood and talked that morning weren't anywhere in his face. He asked the way like he'd never stood there. Said he had a call to make. Said it was set for tomorrow. It had been tomorrow that morning, too. Harold pointed him the long way again. The man took 9 again, and that night Harold went inside and looked at the paper. The date on it. The salesman had first pulled in 4 days back. 4 days. To that man, the same afternoon. He never knew he'd lost them. He's the lucky one in tonight's letter, if you want the truth of it. Drove off 4 days short and whole otherwise. Harold never saw the car again. The next one, Harold wouldn't have raised himself. I had to ask. I'd heard about it years ago. A couple, 84, out-of-state plates. Harold remembers the plates and not the state, which is very like him. Young, the both of them, he had the sense they were on a trip, the unhurried kind of people who pull into a crossroads and ask not for the fast way south, but the pretty one. And 9 is pretty. That's the thing nobody puts in the warning. That road running down into that country is as handsome a stretch as you'll find in this state. Harold told them the long way. They wanted the pretty way. They took 9. They didn't come back through. Harold watched for them. He wouldn't put it that way. He's not a man who'd admit to watching. But he told me he carried the out-of-state car in his mind a few weeks, looking for it northbound at the end of the day. It never came. And that isn't even the part that stays with me. People drive a loop, go home another way. A car not passing the same pump twice is nothing. Here's the part. Nobody ever came asking. No trooper at the pumps with a photograph. No flyer at the diner. No name in the paper. A young couple drove south on a road on a fine day, and the world closed up behind them without one ripple. And the only soul who even knew to wonder was an old man at a crossroads who wasn't sure it was his place to. I've given you 2 strangers now, people who didn't know the road, who took the map's word over a local's the way strangers do. And I can see how that lets you off the hook a little. You're sitting there thinking, I'd have listened. I'd have taken the long way. So let me give you one more before we go on. Harold didn't want to tell me this one at all, because this one knew. She was a local girl. Harold's known her people the whole 50 years. Grew up 40 minutes from that crossroads, which is to say she grew up knowing what you don't do, the way you know not to put your hand on a hot stove. She'd have turned the long way her whole life and never once felt it as a choice. One evening she came through fast. Word had come that her father was bad down south. The kind of bad where the man on the telephone says, "Come now," and means it. She pulled into Harold's pumps with her hands going, and she didn't ask him the way. She knew the way. She asked him how long the long way took. Harold told her, 40 minutes, the way around, and she looked at 9. You could watch her do the arithmetic. 40 minutes the safe way, and her father maybe not holding 40 minutes. She knew exactly what that road was. She'd known her whole life, and she had a reason bigger than knowing. Harold didn't try to stop her. I pushed him on that at the table. I said, "Harold, you of all people, you watched her turn onto 9. Why didn't you say something?" And he looked at me a long moment and he said, "What was I going to tell her, Edward? Take the slow road to your dying father?" There's no warning that fits that. There's no rule you hand a person who's already got her hand on the door. She took 9. Here's the worst of it. The thing Harold made me understand at that table, and the reason I think he carried this one heaviest. She took the fast road to buy time. And that road does not give you time. Time is the one thing it takes. She was gone a long while on a short road. And by the time it let her go, the 40 minutes she'd risked the whole world to save were long spent. And so was her father. And so was the chance to have been there, which is the part nobody hands back. She traded the rule for time, and the road took the time anyway. So when I tell you not to take 9, no, I'm not only talking to the strangers with the maps. The ones who knew took it too. The road doesn't care what you know. It doesn't distinguish.
Harold gave me one from 1990 he still turns over in his hands. He knew the car. A cream and rust two-tone, the kind you'd know going and coming. And he'd seen it at the pumps a time or two that month. Not a stranger. One afternoon it went south on 9. Harold watched it take the turn he watches everybody take, around 4. And near dark that same day, it went south on 9 again. Same car, same turn, south. And it had not come back north in between. Harold was at those pumps the whole of that day, and the crossroads is the only way through. A thing has to come back north past him before it can head south a second time. This one didn't. It went south. And then, without ever once returning, it went south again. Harold can give you the car, the color, near enough the hour. He won't tell you what it means. He only said a road that'll do that to a car is a road you don't put your faith in. And he let it sit. And then there's the one I started with tonight, the young man. He came through for a new job south not so long ago. Found 9 on his map the way they all do, the fast way, and he took it. Not every day, 2-3 times a week, when the work called him down. And the first while, he was about the brightest thing to come through that crossroads in years. A talker, Harold's kind, the sort who give you his whole life at a gas pump and mean every word of it. They got to be friends near enough, the way you do with a man you see twice a week. He knew Harold's name. He'd linger. Harold liked him. I want that on the record for where this goes. Harold liked him. Harold tried to say something, once. You understand, he couldn't say it the way the family could. That was never his to say. But he got as near it as a man can who was never handed the words. Something about the road. About how some folks took the long way for their own reasons. The young man laughed, friendly, said he'd take his chances with the shortcut. They take the map. And then Harold watched it happen, a piece at a time, twice a week, for the length of a season. First it was just less talk. A man can have a hard week. Then it was the weight. Come off him faster than weight should, till the clothes he'd shown up in hung on him. Then the voice. The brightness went out of it level by level, until he'd answer Harold in a flat line, yes or no. Like talking cost him something he hadn't got to spare. He stopped lingering, stopped using Harold's name. Stopped meeting his eye. By the end, Harold told me, the man who pulled in twice a week was somebody he'd not have known on the street. Gray, thin past thin, still driving south, still taking 9. The last time he didn't talk at all. Pulled in, filled the tank himself, set the money on the counter, and Harold looked right at the face, and there was nobody behind it he knew. He drove south, and that was the last of him. The car never came back north, and nobody ever came asking. That's the young man I told you about at the top, the one that took a piece at a time. Harold stood at his pumps and watched a man he was fond of get unmade by inches across a season. And the one thing that might have helped him, don't take 9, was the one thing 50 years had never given him the standing to say.
So that's what Harold gave me, across an afternoon and a kitchen table, when I drove down to ask him about a letter. 4 travelers, give or take, out of 50 years. He's got more. He always has more. But those are the ones I wrote down that night, and those are the ones I'll give you. Now, I told you at the top there'd be a road I'd tell you not to take, and that I'd get to why. Here's the why, and here's the telling, and I'm going to do it plainly because I can. Don't take the road that wasn't there yesterday. If there's a road you don't know, newer than your memory of the place, a road your map swears is fine, and the people who live there won't use it, you don't use it either. You take the long way. You lose the 40 minutes. You take the long way. That's the rule. It's a real one, and I can hand it to you clean tonight, which I'm grateful for, because the last few things I've read you, I couldn't. And I'll tell you why I can. Harold couldn't. 50 years that man stood at the one crossroads where you'd have to be told, and he was never the one allowed to tell you. He watched the map win over and over, and he kept his hands at his sides because the knowing was never put in them. I don't have that trouble. I've got a microphone and 4 hours and nobody to answer to but the dark. So let me do the thing Harold never got to. If you're out near Greyford and you come to a crossroads and there's a quick way south the locals won't touch, don't take 9. There. That's said. 50 years late, and not by the man who earned the right to say it, but said. The letter. I haven't forgotten it. I said it's for another night, and it is. But I'll give you this much, so you'll come back for it. The letter is about that road, and it isn't from a stranger passing through. It's the reason I needed to tell you all of this first, so that when I do read it to you, you'll already know what kind of road we're talking about. You'll want to. Trust me on that. This is Field Notes, WGRY 91.3. I'm Edward Hollis, and I'll be here till 4. Lights low, door shut, the static for company. Take the long way home, and stay in where it's warm. I'll talk to you tomorrow night.